Good evening, everybody. Good evening, viewers on Pathlight Thrive Hive if you're watching on Facebook, and good evening or hello if you're watching on YouTube at any other time of day. So I'm Paul Woolstenholme, Director of Pathlight Ltd, and I run a Facebook group called Pathlight Thrive Hive if you're not watching it from there. It's a lovely, friendly group for mental health, well-being, personal development and support around the pandemic and personal development and all that kind of good stuff. So if you're not already a member, do feel free to join. It's facebook.com/groups/Pathlight Thrive Hive. So tonight we have Ange McMillan joining us, and we're going to be talking about lockdown and how we survive lockdown, especially if we are working from home or homeschooling our children or both, and how do we manage the stress and anxiety around that. So Ange has got a load of experience, and she's a mental health first aid trainer and a psychotherapist and does lots of work with schools and families. I'll let her introduce herself very shortly. So lots of wisdom to share. If you've got any questions for Ange as we go through this evening, then just pop them in the comments. When your comments pop up, we won't know who it is that is submitting the comment. It will just say Facebook user, unless you go to this little link here, streamyard.com/Facebook. If you go there and just give StreamYard permission to share your name and little photo, then I'll know who it is that's commenting. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. You can remain anonymous to us as well. And if you are enjoying the Hive and you're getting some benefit from it, perhaps you will consider supporting the Hive financially. You can do that in two ways. You can go to I put the wrong link up, but it should be that one. It's been a long day. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/thrivehive, and you can either subscribe for £7 per month and get lots of benefits such as discounts off my mental health first aid courses and all other good stuff, or you can just drop me £3, buy me a virtual coffee anytime you wish. Thank you very much to everyone who has done so already, much appreciated. And as I was saying, if you're getting benefit from the group and you feel that it'll be useful to other people, then do feel free to invite them in, or just share it on your social media and other networks. Tell people to come here, the more the merrier. And finally, I'm extremely excited that we're putting on a festival, Thrive Hive Fest, on the 6th and 7th of February. It is going to be very wonderful, and I'm highly excited by it. So the idea is to raise money for my local branch of Mind, the Tameside, Oldham and Glossop branch of Mind, the mental health charity. And whilst we're doing that, we're going to be putting on loads of fantastic bands and solo artists and performance poets. And it's happening on the 6th and 7th of February. Tickets are only £10 for several hours of top quality entertainment. If you want to get yourself a ticket, pathlight.org.uk/events. And the first lineup announcement will hopefully be hitting social media tomorrow, all being well. And lots of great artists already confirmed. Super. So without further ado, we shall bring Ange in. Hello, Ange, and welcome to Pathlight Thrive Hive.
Hello, Paul. Thank you very much for having me here. So, hello, everybody. Paul's been very kind to invite me along to talk to you a little bit about lockdown 3 and lockdown 3 life and what that might look like for us. So as Paul said, I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a mental health awareness trainer. I deliver all kinds of mental health awareness training across England and Wales and across the world. I run a parent and carer support group on Facebook, which is how I came into contact with Paul in the first place. I've been a psychotherapist and counsellor since 2007, qualified fully in 2011. Been in private practice ever since. I work with young children aged 4 up. I also work with adults and I specialise in anxiety and anxiety disorders. So a lot of the work I'm doing at the moment is around supporting people who are experiencing stress and anxiety and how to reduce those stress levels. So I'm going to probably share some of those tips with you later on today. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell, all things mental health, really.
Lovely. Yes. Thank you for that, Ange, and thank you very much for being here and sharing your experience and wisdom with us. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of all your tips for lockdown and stress and anxiety, would you be happy to share with us something of your history, your kind of mental health history and the journey that got you to doing the work that you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really interesting when you asked me that question on email, and I started sort of writing about kind of where I'd come from and how I'd ended up at this point. It was quite interesting to kind of put everything on a timeline. So as I shared with you in my message, I guess I'd probably experienced anxiety from around the age of 10. But in those days, I'm 43, in those days, it wasn't called anxiety. People didn't talk about mental health or mental health struggles. And I just kind of got on with things, really. Lots and lots of life events happened, which I won't go into detail. But eventually I got diagnosed with severe anxiety, and I've been recovered now for about 5 years, which is amazing. But I think that's kind of what led me to sort of specialising in this area and realising that there was a lot of things that I could do to kind of help support my own mental health. And I'm going to sort of share some of those things with you later on today. But throughout that journey, I've kind of set up a business when I was 25. Realised that life didn't really have a huge amount of meaning, and kind of got into working for Childline, became a youth worker, and then started working for lots of different mental health charities. So Mind, the YMCA, Terence Higgins Trust, and volunteered at Childline for around 7 years. And I've got an interview with them, I think, this coming Friday to go back to do some work with them again. So yeah, that just kind of led me onto this path of training to be a therapist. And I guess there's always been a part of me that's wanted to support teenagers in particular in a way that actually I wasn't really supported. I was made homeless when I was 15 and had quite an interesting experience during that time in my life. So part of my work is I'm kind of working with trauma and supporting teenagers and helping them kind of navigate their way through what are sometimes kind of difficult paths and difficult journeys.
So would you say you kind of fit the therapeutic archetype of the wounded healer, Ange?
Yes, I suppose so. But I think to be a good therapist, I think a lot of work has to be done to ensure that we don't take our own stuff into our client work. So thank goodness for therapy, and thank goodness for supervision. And I think understanding that means being able to bracket that off, and if things get activated, kind of knowing what to do with that and where to put that. And there are particular areas that I don't work with for those reasons, to protect myself and to ensure the well-being of my clients as well. I don't do all things for all people. I kind of quite specific in the type of work that I do and the clients that I choose to work with.
Yeah, it's really important to maintain those boundaries. And I'm curious that you said those difficult life events that you experienced in your teenage years and the support that wasn't there for you. Is that really the main factor that's driven you to particularly work with teenagers, or particularly enjoy working with teenagers?
I think that's part of it. I think something else that I love about teenagers is that the whole world is kind of open to them, and they're curious and excited and experimenting and afraid and don't know who they are and know exactly who they are, and they're fluid and will be very, very clear about their likes and dislikes if they work with somebody that they don't like. What I love is the kind of the honesty that comes with that. So I take kind of great pleasure from kind of building those relationships, I guess, and nurturing those relationships and seeing people grow and kind of thrive and move on. It's, you know, it's a real privilege to do that work.
Yeah, and teenagers get a bad rap very often, don't they? That, you know, that they're going through so many challenges with the pressures of social media and peer pressures and exams and hormones flying around, and that wanting to to break from their parents and find their independence. It can be an incredibly traumatic time, but if you do develop that relationship, as you spoke of there, it can be incredibly rewarding when they do connect with you.
100%. And I think knowing that that's something that's earned, that isn't just a given, I think that's the privilege in doing that work, that young people can choose who they connect to and how they connect, and that's a gift. And if that's given to you as an adult in a young person's life, then I personally see that as a privilege. So kind of an honour and something to be honoured as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so and one other thing I wanted to touch on before we get into the tips for lockdown, it was around the previous business that you started up. You said in your email that you wanted to make something of yourself. You're very determined to do something, and you set up that business, and it was very successful, but you didn't continue it, and you switched into the mental health and wellbeing side of things. Was that because you wanted more meaning, or was there another reason behind that?
Yeah, I mean, without going into the detail of how that business ended up kind of getting set up in the first place, there were quite specific reasons connected to my relationship with somebody else. So that business was set up to help and support them in their sort of growth, and it was great, but it was a cleaning business. I was 25 years old, so I'd worked in Marks and Spencer's as a manager before then, so I had experience of working with teams of people, but that was all. But there was certainly no meaning behind that. It was fun, and and I worked very hard, but there wasn't a sense of, it didn't feel like that was my mission or my purpose. And I kind of stumbled across youth work, I don't even know how, and started volunteering and did some youth work qualifications, and it just felt like the penny had kind of dropped. There was this kind of click moment of, actually, yes, this is where I want to be. But I didn't feel like I had the skills to be working with the young people that I was working with at the time. Hence the kind of counselling journey that sort of followed on from that. And that's proper, like, kind of heart meaning mission. That's my sort of home, where I come back to. It's my therapeutic work, without a doubt.
Yeah, lovely. And just one more question before we get into the nitty gritty. So you said that you've been in recovery from your own anxiety for 5 years now. Would you be happy to share how you recovered? What has supported that recovery, I suppose?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of the reason why I sort of deliver courses, why I specifically kind of wrote a course around anxiety, is I think I felt really, really helpless. I didn't really know where to go to get help. And so the first thing I did, which I recommend everybody does, is I went to the doctor, and I would say within 30 seconds of that consultation starting, I was offered medication. I didn't personally want for that to be my first port of call. I wanted some other options available to me, knowing that should I choose that path of medication, I tried other things first. And there just wasn't a lot of stuff out there that helped me kind of get a sense of what works here. So I just went on a bit of a mission of thinking about whole of life functioning. So sleep, really, I mean, fundamental, obvious things. So getting my sleep right. I loved coffee. I still love coffee. Not drinking coffee, it made my anxiety worse. Now my joy is I can drink a cup of coffee once a day in the morning, and I don't have that horrible kind of feeling of goodness, so I might be anxious. Making sure I was nourishing my body, so actually thinking about the links between food and my own mental health, kind of cutting things out, and working things out, trial and error. Exercise, high intensity interval training is still my absolute go-to. complete the stress response as it's known now. But my body was in a constant state of flight. That's what I'm prone to. So I'm in constant motion, still overwork. I still do a lot of kind of flight things, but kind of recognizing those tendencies. I quit a job that I loved because it wasn't very good for my mental health. I was running a really big counselling service and I just wasn't supported. I learned to say no, to set boundaries, and that's still an ongoing lesson and task that I set myself, particularly because I do work that I love. So it's very, very easy to say yes rather than not right now or I can't. And actually reaching out to other people and being honest and actually telling people I'm not okay. And for some people, they found that really hard because I'm the one that people go to. But for others, that was really eye-opening. So it helped me reevaluate my friendships and my relationships with people as well. So, and I had therapy, and I've had, multiple bouts of therapy throughout my life. But I found a therapist who really understood what was going on with my anxiety and help me work through that. So lots of different strands, and I didn't do it all in one go. I kind of did it piece by piece, and it took a long time. It probably took me a year and a half, and I still am prone to feeling anxious. And I have to be really careful around what I do and don't do because the scales can tip quite easily. But I think for me as a therapist, not everybody wants to come to therapy. Not everybody's ready. Not everybody can afford it. And when I'm delivering training and talking about particularly anxiety, is reminding people that there are things that you can do at home by yourself or with your children or with your family that can reduce your anxiety levels, but it doesn't go away on its own. So it is work, and it's okay if we're not ready to do that work, and it's okay if we just want to pick the sleep and carry on drinking coffee and do nothing else. But pick your thing and try it and see what happens. Because what's the worst that could happen? You carry on feeling the way that you're feeling, try something else. It's not a race. And actually, if we stop trying to race to fix ourselves, I think that's where the kind of deep work can be done and the real lasting changes can be made. So that's sort of my path and my journey, I guess.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ange. It sounds like you basically did a life audit and looked at your job, you looked at your holistic well-being, your daily routine, what you're consuming, how you're treating your body, and putting those boundaries in place and having therapy and all sorts of things over an extended period. So yeah, really good. Excellent. Thank you. So into the meat of today, we're talking about how we can support people and reduce that anxiety and stress around lockdown, whether you're homeschooling or home working or both. So over to you and your tips of wisdom, Ange.
Well, feel free to kind of step in as I'm talking as well, and if I'm kind of unclear, I'd love to kind of get your perspective as well. So I guess for me, when I was thinking about this, and I'm also thinking about kind of the parents and people I'm supporting at the moment, thinking about the impact that this lockdown has had on people. I think people kind of thought they were prepared for it. And actually lots of people that I've been talking to have felt like it's a real shock to the system. The hope has been the schools would stay open. And I think whilst people thought they might close, I think that the abruptness in which everything happened was a huge shock to people's systems. I know certainly friends of mine who have their own businesses were, they were ready for their children to go to school so they could go to work and have their time. And I think what's happened is that sort of felt like it's been taken away. Rightly, I haven't heard anybody say this is the wrong thing. But I think the challenge is, as I was saying to you just before we sort of kind of came on here live, is, trying to juggle everything at the same time. Now, whether we live alone or whether we live in a house of 5 other people, the challenges of working from home or being in your house all the time are huge. And I think I keep coming back to that kind of that quick fix mentality that I think the world is kind of in a little bit at the moment. Like, why don't I feel better today? Why am I not stress-free now? Why hasn't whatever it is made me feel better? So I think some of us, I don't want to speak for everybody here, we're putting pressure on ourselves to be running this perfect house, whatever that is, and whoever you live with, or even if you live alone with your cats or just by yourself, that we should have smashed this by now, that we should know exactly what we're doing, we should have a routine, we should be working out and our sleep should be right, and actually we're in the middle of a global pandemic and we're not supposed to have all our stuff together right now. Like, it's okay if you're not getting dressed until 11 o'clock in the morning. It's okay if you're walking the dog with your coat on and your dressing gown underneath. I think kind of bringing yourself back to remembering that just because we're online and we're looking at all those people that are getting up at 5 a.m. and by the way, amazing if you are, but if you're watching lots of people getting up at 5 a.m. and smashing everything and reading books and doing lots of stuff and you're not, that's okay. That's okay. You don't have to do this stuff right now. Like, let's get through this bit, get through the hour, get through the day, get through the week. It's all right to kind of pull things right back. And, if you're working from home, to recognize that that isn't going to look the same if you have 2 children and your dog in the room with you, that your meetings are not going to be the same as they might have been 3 months ago when the kids were at school. And setting ourselves those same standards, like the expectation that we can deliver the same stuff. I think if we can find a way of reminding ourselves not to do that, then that's going to help our mental health and well-being. If we don't do anything else, it's just remembering, here we are all in this together, and it's hard. And some people might be grieving, some people might have lost their jobs, we might be grieving what we hoped our children might have had in terms of kind of education, or doing exams or graduating or whatever that is. And so we're holding a lot at the moment, I think, and we are not designed to be on our own, right? We were talking about this earlier on, talking about missing contact with friends and family, hugging people. Our nervous systems are literally in a state of fight or flight at the moment. They feel under threat. And so we are having a stress response, even if you're living your best life in your house and it's cozy and lovely and safe, the fact that we're not in contact with other human beings, our body somewhere is going, something's wrong. The tribe have left me. Why am I here by myself? So, if we find that, we were talking about the stress container earlier, if you find that actually your container where your stress pours in, if you're finding that that's really, really small at the moment, that's because there's a lot of stuff in here at the moment that's just out there in the world. It might not be in your house right now. So it's kind of permission to just take a moment to actually think, it's okay to be where I am right now.
So it's self-compassion, I think, isn't it? And as you said about lowering our expectations, especially if we are perfectionistic or we set ourselves very high standards, we don't necessarily need to be juggling all those balls. It's okay to put some of those balls down for a while. It doesn't matter if the house is a bit dusty. Let's just be compassionate towards ourselves.
And I really love that, what you were saying about how, it's okay if the house is a bit dusty, because it is. It really is. Like, that's not going to ruin anything. If we've gone into that really kind of big anxiety response, which I described earlier on, if you're a flight type, you will probably be in constant motion. You'll need to be doing, you'll want to be tidying, you'll want to have everything perfect, as you said. All of that fits into a kind of flight response. And as you said, if you can find one thing that you can put down, even if it's just for a day, so what? So you're going to dust tomorrow instead of today. You know, what could you do instead? If you had 5 extra minutes, what could you do instead of that might nourish you? As you said about self-compassion, to think about what that could look like. You know, and yeah, if dusting the house is the thing that makes you feel absolutely amazing, dust the house. You know, it's not about not doing things. Yeah. I like a little bit of tidying, but we all have things that kind of make us feel okay and calm, but that doesn't mean that we have to do everything. So I think that's my kind of starting point for this, really.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. Thank you, Ange. And yeah, you know, you talked about that 5 minutes there. We thought, okay, I've done something. I've got all these other things on my list of things to do. And if we are in that kind of flight mode, we might feel we haven't been successful if we haven't ticked off all of those things on our list. But I like what you said about, okay, well, maybe I can pull away from that list and just take 5 minutes for me to go for a little walk or go out in the garden or have a little meditate or whatever it is.
Absolutely. The list is still going to be there. It's not like I'm asking you to rip it up or shred it or to jump up and down on it. You can come back to that. And some of us, I know I am, love a list. It helps me feel safe. So actually for some of us, that might be our way of feeling kind of calm and grounded. But as you said, remembering a to-do list can be a rolling thing. You don't have to do it all in one day. So if you are a list type of person, then reminding yourself you can transfer that stuff over to tomorrow. So yeah, dusting might be on the list for the next 3 days, but hopefully nothing terrible is going to happen if the dusting isn't done. And I think it's kind of having a look at what can you prioritize, what's going to help you feel okay, whatever that is. And if that is just taking 5 minutes, as you said, to go for a walk, then do that. If you can't go for a walk, can you open a window? If you can't open a window, can you stand by the window and look outside, find something green, take some deep breaths, reset, go back to whatever it is that you're doing. You know, there are no rules around how we navigate our way through a global pandemic. We don't know how to do this. Some people are doing really, really well. If you go on Instagram or LinkedIn, there are a lot of coaches on there smashing out whatever 50K weeks, and that's amazing. But that isn't going to be true for everybody that's sat here right now. And actually, if we can just look at what am I doing rather than what is that person doing, reminding ourselves that you know you. If you have a family, you know your family. If you have friends, you know the people around you. You don't need to compare yourself right now, because it sets us up to fail. It sets us up to feel disappointed in ourselves. And frankly, we're all doing enough right now. So it's okay just to kind of pull things right back. And I think on the back of that, I just wanted to say around homeschooling, for those people that might be homeschooling, I have been chatting to teachers who are parents, who are at home, who are really, really struggling to try and teach their children. Now, that's somebody who's qualified to do that job. So, but they're not teachers to their children, they're parents or carers. And so everything becomes really different. So one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is, how amazing we can sit down and go through the curriculum together. Fabulous. Amazing if your kids will do that. Amazing if you understand half of the stuff, certainly in the English curriculum. It's really hard, a lot of that stuff, unless you're like super, super bright. But actually, there are a lot of life skills that we could teach our children whilst we're at home, like preparing a meal, like putting stuff in the washing machine, like playing a board game together and then putting it away at the end. You know, those simple things, those household tasks that I think if some people are homeschooling, certainly is like, how am I going to cook lunch? How am I going to get my job done? How am I going to teach the kids? Okay, well, how can we include them in that? Because actually, we want our children to know that stuff so they can go out there in the world and be amazing human beings. I'd rather my kids could cook a beautiful meal and were kind to each other and understood how laundry worked. And we can talk about the science of that. That's homeschooling as much as sitting down and doing a physics lesson, in my opinion.
I agree. They're life skills. And I have to thank you, Ange, because I was listening to a podcast that you recommended in your Parent and Carers Facebook group, which was Parental as Anything. And I was listening to an episode of that the other day, which was about how do you get your children to do chores? And I thought that was really useful, practical advice. And the 4 stages that they talked of teaching a child these life skills is, first of all, you do it whilst they watch. So if it's making a sandwich, for example, you say, right, come over here, I'm going to make it. This is how you make a sandwich, and you do it. And the second stage is you do it with them. So you do it together. The third stage is you supervise them whilst they do it. And then the 4th stage is they do it themselves. So that's how you teach them how to use a knife correctly or load the washing machine or whatever it is. It's useful.
I love that. I haven't listened to that episode, but I'm gonna have a little listen, because I think there's just they're really helpful things. And actually, if you're thinking about if you were an occupational therapist, you were teaching fine motor skills, or you were teaching kind of planning, or kind of motivating, you know, to do certain things, then there are a lot of activities like that can make a huge difference. And, you know, and if you're working from home and you don't have children or pets around you, thinking about, you know, how do you create kind of routine and structure in a way that helps you feel kind of calm and regulated? So actually, some of you might want to get up at the same time each day. I always dress for work. My husband will wear his joggers all day, but I don't feel like I'm working unless I do that. So there are little things we can do if we need to trick our brains to help ourselves feel that there's some sort of routine and structure, whether that's you schedule your breaks or you schedule your lunches, you make sure you go away from your screen. You know, we don't have to sit in front of a screen for 12 hours a day. It's not good for our well-being. And I think certainly in the first lockdown, a lot of people felt almost like they had to be overworking online to kind of prove that they were doing their jobs. But we can be really super efficient, and it's much better for our well-being if we can do the things that you described, like going out for walks, or, you know, cooking a simple lunch and sitting down and eating it and enjoying it rather than rushing through things. So I think it can be an opportunity as well to stop and take stock, and to breathe, because we're also not doing a lot of that. So we're like panicking. So actually, how do we breathe properly? And what can we do to help kind of activate the rest and digest in our nervous system? You know, just a few deep breaths before you go and do something stressful will help you calm, and it will help your body and your brain not think that it's in danger. And there's simple things. It takes a minute to take a few deep breaths. You don't have to close your eyes. No one even needs to know you're doing it. You can do it in your Zoom meeting, but actually you can do it with your kids. You know, mindful minutes, beginning, middle and end of the day, you know, can be really, really helpful if everything feels a bit chaotic, without it being, you know, and here we are with 20 minutes and we've all got to close our eyes. But actually, and that's lovely if you can, but 1 or 2 minutes can still have an effect as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Ange. And something that I found useful at times, I don't know about you, but sometimes I can be sat at my computer and just typing away, doing one task after another, and before I know it, I've been sat here for 2 hours without moving. So that's not really good for us. So there's a couple of things I do. One, sometimes I can set a timer, and I will work for either 50 minutes or an hour, and then I'll give myself 5 to 10 minutes off, and I'll go for a little walk, or I'll get a drink or whatever it is. And drinking is the other thing. I always have a pint of water at my side, and once that's empty, I go and fill it up. And of course, it's good, hydrating the body, but also means I've got to go to the loo quite frequently. So yeah, gets you out of the seat.
Absolutely. I love timer methods work really well for me. I have a similar tendency to, especially if I'm immersed in something. When I was course writing last week, I had about 30 books on either side of me, which is fabulous, but just meant that I just kind of stayed here sort of surrounded by books. But actually at that timer method, as you said, you know, and there's something called the Pomodoro technique. I don't know whether you've heard of that. It's 25 minutes on, 5 minutes rest. So there are various apps you can get. There's one called Focus Keeper, I think, but you can just put it on your watch or on your phone. So 25 minutes, do your work, and then you've got 5 minutes where you can get up, go for a wee, stretch your legs, and then come back and do another 25 minutes. And it does it in blocks. And then it encourages you, I think, after 4 to take a longer break as well. So yeah, if you're prone to getting sucked into things, it's a really lovely way of kind of breaking you kind of out of that kind of cycle of things, I guess.
Pomodoro technique. I've not heard of that. I thought that was a type of tomato, but anyway, there's an app for that.
Yeah, it's Pomodoro. I'll send you a link afterwards. I'll send you a link to the it's called Focus Keeper, I think, which is a free app as well.
Thank you.
So yeah, I suppose we've kind of covered things like how do we move our bodies, and I think it's lovely if we can all go out for a walk, but we might not have that luxury. But you know, how can you just do some stretches? You know, if you're not kind of physically mobile or able to move around very much, what could you do? Even if you're just moving yourself slightly from sort of one position to another, to just kind of help your body reset as well. And if you are able to move, then completing that stress cycle. So actually, how do we, if we are feeling stressed, actually allowing our bodies to move, because that's what they're designed to do in times of stress, again, can make a huge difference. I say to clients, jog up and down on the spot for 30 seconds. Run away from the saber-toothed tiger that you might have sort of, your nervous system imagines still exists, because actually then your body kind of releases some of those stress hormones rather than just flooding your body with them as well. And kind of giving yourself time to reset with things as well. And, you know, if you're feeling stressed, actually allowing yourself a bit of time to sort of recover from that. You know, you don't have to go straight back into things.
Yeah, so that movement combined with what you said, Ange, about breathing properly. Many of us breathe very shallowly up in our chest, especially if we're feeling anxious. So learning to really take those deep, slow breaths into our belly can be really helpful.
And it can feel really challenging to start off with when we start to think about how we breathe, particularly if we're prone to anxious thoughts, or we're prone to that kind of flood of anxiety. Thinking about our breathing can sometimes make things feel a bit worse. So remembering that we can start really small. You know this, I love something called 3-4-5 breathing, where you breathe in for 3, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 5, and you do that at your pace for 2 minutes. So my 3 might be, you know, far too long for you, or vice versa, but you can then take control over that. Activates the rest and digest, your parasympathetic nervous system, calms your whole body down. Really good if you wake up in the middle of the night feeling anxious or overwhelmed, and really, really simple. And there are varying combinations of numbers, as I'm sure you know. 3, 4, 5 is what I remember, because I'm not very good at remembering numbers. But yeah, it can help you. Can help you reset. So, and you know, as you said, if we're breathing properly rather than in that shallow way, then our bodies feel safe. It will help us sleep. It will help us process things. You know, it has a huge knock-on effect in lots of different areas.
Wonderful, thank you. So I wonder if you've got any particular tips around working practices. We've talked about taking breaks and stuff, but is there anything, you know, if somebody is trying to juggle working from home whilst they may or may not have children around as well? Is there any kind of practices you can offer some tips on there?
I think some of it comes back to that sort of managing expectations, that you're probably not going to be able to do as much as you'd like to. And with that may come some feelings of frustration. So having a think about what can you do to release that in a way that sort of feels helpful for you. So rather than shouting at the cat or slamming a door, actually recognizing, this is really frustrating right now. Close the laptop, go and do something else for 5 minutes. And if we are snappy with the people around us because we haven't got everything done, how do we reconnect to them afterwards? How do we connect and then repair that? So because working from home can be really challenging. It's great if you've got your own office, but not everybody has that. And again, I've got friends who one will be on a laptop in one corner of the room running a conference, and somebody will be on the other side of the house. My cat's sat next to me now singing me a little song at the moment. So actually, if you've got two of you in the same room and you're trying to work together, you're just dealing with the challenges of that as well. So kind of permission to, it might not look exactly how you want, and it might mean for you changing how you structure your working day. So whether that is you do get up earlier and you have some quiet time, or you do choose to just allocate working hours maybe in the evening, again thinking about your well-being, but maybe recognizing that in the morning when all the schoolwork is due in, you might not be able to get anything done. So hopefully if you work for somebody, having that conversation and shifting your hours so that actually that kind of fits with what else is happening in your household at the moment. And and easy for me to say, structure and routine can be really, really helpful for everybody. So if everybody in the house knows we're going for a walk at 1, or we're having a tea break at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and sticking to that can sometimes reduce stress levels in the house anyway. And remembering that just taking 5 minutes for you, for those of you that have sort of more than one child, my sister's got 2 children under the age of 5, but 5 minutes for you could just be like going to the loo for a little bit of a longer period than you would do normally, and just sitting there and taking some nice deep breaths before you go back out and start again. So yeah, just kind of doing what you can with what you've got, and permission to not have everything together right now. It's okay if you haven't.
Thank you for that, Ange. I really like what you said there about having that conversation if you have an employer, and hopefully they will be understanding to your situation if you've got a family or other responsibilities at home. Not all employers are, I understand that, but actually having the courage and the confidence to speak to an employer and say, look, I need to have some flexibility around my working hours, or I'm going to work in the evenings or at the weekends, or whatever works with you. Just ask the question. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think a lot of employers are in the same situations as well. You've got people right at the top of companies who are sat there with their kids on their lap or playing in the background, because that's the reality of their world as well. And you're right, it would be great if every employer was kind of lovely and accommodating, and we just have to hope that as many people as possible are recognizing the situation we're in, and they are showing that care, because we know that good levels of well-being in employees means people will stay, and people will actually work harder for you. So those little adjustments, those of you that are perhaps employers or line managers, those little adjustments, keeping your staff with you, whatever that looks like right now, means hopefully they'll stay.
As you said earlier, Ange, we're all in this together. So anything we can do to support each other whilst maintaining those healthy boundaries is going to be positive. And something else that I want to pick up on that you said there is around having set times for certain things, such as lunch or going for a walk or whatever, because there is always the possibility for scope creep when there's a job, whether it's a school lesson that you've been given an hour to do, I know, my daughter's very conscientious and she will go beyond that hour to try and get it as close to perfect as she could. But that means that other stuff doesn't get done. So if we say, right, at 2 o'clock, we are going for a walk as a family, we know then there is a hard stop there and you've got to put your pen down and we're going to go out and get some fresh air.
And I think boundaries can be they're really helpful for everybody. And when you think about school, English doesn't overrun by 20 minutes because Miss wanted to read an extra chapter, however much that might need to have been covered for the curriculum. The lesson finishes at X time and you have to go and do the next thing. So I think our children are actually really used to that structure. And actually for some young people, the fluidity, it's not true for all, but the fluidity of being homeschooled and actually not knowing what I'm doing and when or how, can feel quite stress-inducing. So anything, particularly if you have anxious children or children that are prone to stress, anything we can do to provide that safety and that security, even if they look like they're in the middle of the essay or the story or whatever it is, and again, you know your children, you can give them a 5-minute warning or a 10-minute warning and let them know, in 10 minutes time, 5 minutes time, we're going to be going for our walk. So, and we can manage our own expectations as adults as well. So like you said about setting timers or reminders. So even if we're immersed in something, we can pull ourselves out of that. Because once we get into those habits and routines like walking, we know that has a huge long-term benefit to our mental health and well-being. And we know, and there's really cool research around things like walking, it helps you consolidate information. If you're struggling with something and you go for a walk and you think about it on your walk, there's research that shows actually you will probably be able to solve the problem when you come back. So, take that 5 minutes, see what happens.
Yeah, I've been there many times, just getting some clarity and getting some creative ideas as well on walks. And what we said there about having boundaries around lessons, it's an hour or whatever, and then you stop. I think that equally applies to in the workplace. That scope creep, I know I can spend ages setting up social media, racking up all my social media for the week ahead. And I could do that for hours and hours, but it's really helpful, I find, to say, right, I'm going to give myself an hour and a half to work on this, and then however much I've done, I'll stop. I find I'm more productive and it doesn't then take away from the rest of the day.
Absolutely. And the Pomodoro technique kind of works on the same principles. If you set yourself a time limit, you will stop looking at other things to do to distract you and will just focus on the task. So it can be really helpful.
Yeah. And I think that structure that we've spoken of is also really helpful for neurodiverse people, not just children, but people, for example, on the autistic spectrum. They need that structure, and having a set of time and knowing that this is what they've got to do within this time as much as they can be really comforting and anxiety reducing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got up to 10 minutes left if we need it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share, Ange? I
think there are two things, actually. I've got a little quote to kind of end on. But something I invite in a lot of my training, because I work a lot with teachers who are very, very time restricted or time limited, and I invite them to think about something that they do that helps them feel calm. So I invite you, and I'm not going to ask you to share, but I invite you to think about something you do that makes you feel calm. It could be anything at all, but something that you do. But actually, very often, those things that help us are often the things that get pushed to one side in times of busyness. So I invite people to think about whatever that one thing is. Now, it could be a walk, as you described. It could be having a lovely long hot bath. We don't always have the luxuries of kind of 20 minutes or half an hour. So what elements from that could you take that you could just fit into 5 minutes? So it could be just reading 2 pages of a book. That might be just opening the window and breathing in whatever the air is like where you are, or just changing location. But thinking about how often do I need to do this thing to help me get through my day or to help me get through my week. Now, for some people, that might just be 2 or 3 times. For other people, it might be 2 or 3 times a day that they want to start to do that. But to think about your one thing and to think really super small. So not half an hour, as much as we'd all love 30 minutes to meditate. When we set our expectations too high, we sometimes set ourselves up to fall down. So start really small, start with a minute, and then build it up, and then see what happens. And you might find that you develop a habit that will see you through whatever life is throwing at you.
I like that. Starting small, and then we can celebrate those small wins. If we set ourselves a massive target of, right, I'm going to run a marathon by the end of the month, we're probably going to fail and we'll feel worse. So having those small targets and being able to praise ourselves, give ourselves little rewards for achieving those steps towards where we want to be can be really, it can help us to get further along that path.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, what you've set up here and what you've created, thinking about how you create communities online, thinking about how people connect to each other, I think all of those things are really, really important, particularly if we're feeling very isolated, remembering that, yes, there are mental health services out there, but there are also organisations like yours. There are lots of places that offer free resources, and there are all kinds of things out there that I'm sure you signpost people to, and to just kind of remember that, you know, you're not on your own, even though it might feel like that right now. And even just sometimes just downloading an app that gives you some breathing techniques and just doing that can make a really big difference. To recognise the apps on the market, because people need that, but reaching out to others, I think, can really make a huge difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I find in Pathlight 55, my Facebook group, sometimes somebody will share something of their experience, whether it is loneliness or mental health issues or whatever it is, and so many people will comment on it and say, do you know what, I feel very similar to you, or just offer some support or words of encouragement. And it is that not being alone, because very often if we're in our thoughts, we can feel it is only us and everyone else is fine.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just knowing that you're not alone, I think, makes a huge difference. So yeah.
And you know, it's perhaps good to signpost folks to your Facebook group if you'd like to do a bit of a plug for your parent and carers support group, Ange.
If I can remember what the Facebook link was, I don't know what it is. We'll have to put it in the links afterwards. It's on my Elemental Health page. But yeah, it's parent and carer support. So if you are a parent or a carer of a young person experiencing mental health struggles or problems, come along. We're small, we're perfectly formed, but do come and join. There's lots of resources on there. So yeah, and Paul's just popped up on the screen. So yeah, you're welcome to connect with me.
So there's your website there, ehe.org.uk, and the Facebook is Elemental Health Ltd, and people can find a link to your parent and carer support group in there. Very good. Okay, so anything else that you wanted to share before we end, Ange?
I'd written, and mainly because I listened to the podcast, the reading of The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse on Sunday, and lots of you will be familiar with this. But there was just one thing when I was thinking about sort of parenting, or kind of thinking about, well, how do we want to be as human beings? We're not going to be remembered for whether we did our physics homework every single day. But there's just a question that's asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? Kind. And I think with all of this, that kindness, whatever that looks like, whoever we live with, whoever we're connected to, if we can find a way of being kind either to others or to ourselves, it's a good place to start, I think. So yeah, thank you very much.
Beautiful. Got all tingles as you said that, Ange. It's a lovely book. Charlie McKessie. And was it an audio book on the BBC website?
Yeah, it's on BBC Sounds at the moment, I think for maybe another 5 or 10 days, but it's beautiful, and lots of kind of moving music and sound effects that go with it. So yeah, I highly recommend, even if you've got the book, have a little listen. It's stunning.
Yeah, great stuff. So maybe some bedtime listening for you tonight there, folks. So Ange, thank you very much for your time and sharing your expertise with us. Hopefully that's been very valuable for several people and much needed in these challenging times. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to remove you from the studio, Ange, and feel free to hang around if you like, or disappear if you're busy. I'm just going to close up. So thank you again. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. So there we go, folks. Ange McMillan, Elemental Health, if you'd like to follow that up on Facebook or on Tinternet website. So super excited I am. Thrive Hive Fest. I'm putting on a music festival online. Brilliant. Trying to raise the collective spirit, raise the mood, whilst raising some much needed funds for my local branch of Mind, Tameside Alderman Glossop branch. So you can come along and enjoy hours of quality entertainment. We have bands, we have solo artists, we have performance poets, and the bill is looking absolutely fantastic. It really is. And first announcement will be tomorrow, hopefully, of the lineup. If you'd like a ticket, then please head over to pathlight.org.uk/events, £10. Watch it online, 6th and 7th of Feb. And another way of trying to get some money out of you, if you'd got some benefit from what Ange was sharing there, and you get some benefit from the Hive, like we said, people supporting each other and whatever else, you can donate some money or subscribe at buymeacoffee.com/thrivehive. And finally, if you'd like to share the group with your network or invite people in, feel free to do so. The more the merrier, and we can spread some more kindness, as Ange was saying there. Okay, lovely, brilliant. Thanks, Ange and Paul. You're very welcome, and hope you enjoyed that, folks. I can't remember what my next session is. I think it's Tamara. Tamara is the next one, talking about, oh, brain, come along. I tell you what I can do. I can look at my notes over here, can't I? There we are. It's going to be Tamara. Yes, the work of Byron Katie, of course. Yes. So that was due to go ahead before Christmas, but we had some technical issues. But those have hopefully been resolved now. So we're going to be talking to Tamara about the work of Byron Katie in about 10 days' time, I think. I shall post it on the Hive very shortly. So take care of yourselves, and remember what Ange was saying there about being self-compassionate. Don't expect too much of yourself in these challenging times. And if you do need some support, feel free to reach out or just express your experience in the Hive with a written post or a little video, whatever you want to do. We're here for each other. Take care of yourselves. See you soon. Bye-bye.